This is Late Night City with Pete Price.
Right. So to Mike. Oh, Mike.
Hi, yes, another late night call. This time I'm in the car using, and it is legal because I'm using a Bluetooth system. So
all right, so you've got it in your ear.
Yeah, but I'm not even going to be driving in about a minute because I'm arriving outside of Asda, and the reason I'm going there is I haven't even eaten at the normal time, and I'm just literally buying a few things to eat now. You've been taking advantage of the 24-hour Asda.
Is Asda in Neston open 24 hours?
No, we have a Sainsbury's.
Oh, no, Sainsbury's, yeah.
If you want to go to get food this late, then you're either going to Bromborough, Elgin-Port or Queen's Ferry.
Ah, right. I was just trying to work out, yeah.
Got a bit of product placement for Asda there unintentionally in this call. So,
do you realise that you live right next to the best ice cream place in the world in Parkgate?
Oh yes, Nichols Ice Cream, and he has a relationship with the local organic farmer as well.
Nichols is amazing, and every time I see Neston or Parkgate, I get hungry. So when I go home tonight, I'm going to have ice cream. Thanks for that.
That's very good. Yeah.
Right, what do you want to talk about?
So this story is related to this very strange phenomenon. I think I'll introduce it just by talking about it generally, because one group of these stories is in a place that you're very familiar with, that you're looking down on right now, a place that I often go to, Bowl Street, the vibrant Bowl Street in Liverpool. And apparently some instances of this phenomenon have seemingly often occurred in this street. So I'm going to tell you a story which, although it starts out quite mundane, is just quite kind of strange. Now, apparently back in 2006, there was a teenager doing what some teenagers do, which is to shoplift or whatever, up to no good. He was being chased down Bowl Street by a security guard, which is what, and he got up to the top of Bowl Street, where you've got the bombed-out church, and I think you've got the start of Chinatown there, and then you've got Hanover Street or whatever, streets like that. He goes around the corner, and then he goes into this other street around the corner from Bowl Street, and he looks back because the security guard has been right on his tail after him, and he sees nobody there, and he thinks, I've done it now. That's my business done for the day. I've lost him. And he starts to walk back the way he came, believe it or not, back towards the bombed-out church. And then even when he notices that the security guard is definitely gone, he even starts to walk back down Bowl Street, because that's the way he was going anyway. And it sort of hits him as he's walking down Bowl Street that something isn't quite right, but at first he can't really put his finger on it. He sees normal life going on, and it seems quite busy, just as it did. Only that things seem maybe a little bit darker and a bit more moody, and he can't really put his finger on it at all. And then it hits him that all the cars are different. Well, why is that? He couldn't really put his finger on exactly why, but then he notices the number plates have very different letters on them. Because he doesn't know a lot about number plates, presumably, and even that people are wearing different things and maybe behaving a little bit differently. And then as he's walking down Bowl Street, he actually notices that some of the shops that he's familiar with are just not there, or they have different names on them. They have different designs and colours. And at that point, he actually then realises this is a different time. And for some reason, he thinks that it must be a much earlier time. Perhaps the 70s, perhaps the 60s, that sort of thing. And at that point, when he realises that he's in that world, everything's changed. He has no idea if he's going to get out of it or not, and he starts getting scared. Well, if I really have moved back through time, what happens if I get stuck here? What happens to all the people that I know and the life that I have? Will I have to build a life? He should be effectively homeless, wouldn't you? You'd be thinking, we're stuck in this time. I don't know how we got there, and I don't know how to get out of it. But he continued to walk down Bowl Street with all these thoughts racing round in his mind, and him not having an answer as to what he's going to do. And then all of a sudden, and he doesn't even know why, he seems to be he's out of it again. Normal life has returned. The cars are modern day again. The shops and everybody's back to normal. And he thinks, well, that's it. I don't know what happened there, but thank God for that. We're out of it now. And just as he's having those thoughts, he turns to have a look back at Bowl Street, where he's just come from. And to his astonishment, he sees the same scene again. He sees what he was just walking through, somehow, perhaps in a form of mist or something, and he's looking back into that time. further back up Bold Street. Then eventually he takes it, he goes to the Liverpool Echo. He asks people what might have gone on, because it'd be very hard in some cases for people to believe you. Say, well, what is all this about? And so, it's hard to corroborate these types of stories. But of course there was another participant in this, because the Liverpool Echo then contacted the security guard in the shop that he was being chased out from and got his story. And his story was that he was chasing him up Bold Street and he just seemed to disappear at the top. And he carried on up there by the bombed out church and had a look. And he was just nowhere to be seen. Gave up on it. And he wasn't far ahead from him, and so on. And so his story also seems to check out that this lad went into some sort of time slip and disappeared from his very eyes. And this story is one of many stories that you can read about this phenomena known as time slipping, that no one can really explain why it happens.
So what made you come on and talk about that tonight?
Well, I think I've often had these thoughts in my mind, because...
you mean it's happened to you?
Oh, it hasn't actually. I'd love that to happen. I think anybody who's interested in the subject of the paranormal would probably love some sort of experience to happen to them. But no, it hasn't. But there's a collection of stories online that you can read if you do a search when you get in, and if you're interested enough now, you can do that. Or anybody listening, you can do a little search for Bold Street and time slip stories. You'll find that is one of several stories that seem to centre on Bold Street for some reason, as if there's some sort of atmosphere and some sort of reason why the phenomena seems to affect Bold Street. And you'll also find many other stories from around the country and world about these strange incidents. So of all the different paranormal subjects that are out there that you can read about, I've just always found this one the most fascinating one.
So you're into the paranormal in a big way?
Well, I suppose, you could say that about anything you're interested in. I'm interested in all sorts of things, but I'm the sort of person that does have an open mind about these things, about whether there's all sorts of other possibilities beyond what we can immediately see and hear, and other dimensions, other possibilities of for example, there are lots of theories about reasons for these possible time slips, one of which is that if there's a strong atmosphere or emotion embedded in a place, it may cause some people who are sensitive to it to temporarily tap into that feeling and then go back in time to when something occurred, and then it's often reported in these stories that sometimes it doesn't often take place as a literal transformation or time travel back through time. That there's a heavy mood, there's a feeling of being heavy and oppressed, and sometimes losing the sound of the scene, almost as if something's being replayed. So there was once a story of somebody visiting a churchyard, and everything going very, very dull around them, and they'd heard the singing of the birds before they'd slipped into this, and then everything seemed to go to almost deathly silence. And then they saw the scene of a funeral being played slightly in front of them. They saw people in old-fashioned dress, and as you often get on these paranormal stories, not just time slips, but when somebody is transported back to something that may be some sort of emotional replay, there's usually no contact between what the people and the scenes that are being witnessed. For example, you may look at somebody who is now a spectre or an apparition in front of you, and they're not able to see you. You're actually just looking back through time or something. They're not able to actually see you and make contact. You're just witnessing something. That seems to be a common thread with it, and seems to often apply to time slips as well, that there's no actual contact. But there's been all sorts of things. I mean, there's been people, for example, who've gone walking in across the countryside and found a house, and then tried to find it again on the next time that they've gone on the same route, and it's not there.
Wow. I
mean, lots of these stories could be fabrications, but because there are so many, and even some that have been featured on a program that you may remember on ITV in the 90s, which was called Strange But True.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, there was a very, very good time slip story on that as well. which maybe we could go into another.
Another time, because we've only got a minute left. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Great way to finish. We've had the EU all night and you, which is, how do we know these people are not on mind-bending drugs, says James. There are loads of similar stories, but just in different cities, and they seem to be the same sort of details. Very quickly answer that.
Well, that's the thing. If you read any accounts online, or even in a book, or even on a national documentary, like you can't fully prove that story is real. Only the frequency of the similar type of reporting may give some credence, or when there are multiple people involved, all of whom are saying the same story.
Mike, say goodnight.
I'll say good night to you, Liverpool, the North West and North Wales. Have a very nice sleep.
Thanks, Mike. Sorry we had to cut you short. Fascinating. About 4 emails came in just as you said that. Right. Well, we've only got 4 months of VU. I think it'll all die down shortly, and then we will have the vote. Thank you very much to Ashley. Thank you to Jonathan, my producer. Thank you to your company. And thank you to Carol ringing up to tell me about her PM, whatever it is. Whatever. Night, all of you. Sleep tight. Hope you're not too cold. And yeah.